critical infrastructures. So why are they important? Well, what if you wake up in the morning, your lights don't come on, your cell phone doesn't work, and your GPS on your car just says recalculating? You probably couldn't find your way to Heritage Ranch if that happened. So we know the bad guys are targeting our critical infrastructures, and we're working hard to protect them. Another program we're working on will look at drones and their use in warfare. And if you saw John Antal's program, you know that his predictions about the use of drones in warfare are playing out in Ukraine. So add in artificial intelligence with that. It's a pretty scary future. We're going to talk about that. Finally, although it's not on this slide, we'll have some pretty exciting news at our next event regarding the award of our second Sam Johnson Defender of Freedom Award. I think you remember the one with Scott Murray last year. We're going to do that again. So looking down the road a bit, we're looking for topics that might interest you. I think a online poll has gone out with a list of topics you might be interested in. If you have some, let us know about it, and we'll pursue those. So tonight we'll use the same question and answer process we always use. There are question cards on the table. If you want to fill those out, you can write your question, hold your hand up, our runner will pick that up, and we'll get those up to the moderator. You can email your questions to that Gmail inbox up there, ndbs.questions@gmail.com. I'll get those and pass them to the moderator. And finally, if we have time, we'll do live Q&A, so hold up your hand. If you do that, please wait until we bring you a microphone because we're videotaping this program, and we want to make sure that we get your question on the record. So our program today is entitled Southern Border Perspective, and there cannot be a topic, I think you'd all agree, more important for the environment we live in today. Since the creation of the Republic of Texas in 1836, the relationship between Texas and Mexico has been strained with conflicts over territory and issues such as border security, drug trafficking, and illegal migration. Today, these strains continue, but Texas and Mexico maintain important economic ties with trade between the two regions totaling billions of dollars annually, and despite ongoing political and cultural tensions, Texas and Mexico remain inextricably linked by history and geography. Over the past decade, the southern border policy and enforcement has become a potent political issue and is likely to remain so through the upcoming election cycle. Our approach here at NDBS has always been to remain non-political and non-partisan, concentrating on facts and solutions, and most importantly, bringing to the stage subject matter experts who can share their expertise and address your questions, and that's what we'll do tonight. So tonight we have three such experts, and in order to maximize the speaking time, we've asked Congressman Self to do double duty as a panelist and a moderator. So I'll provide brief introductions and turn it over to Keith to moderate the discussion. First, of course, is Congressman Keith Self, known, I'm sure, to everyone in the room. Keith is a West Point graduate who served 25 years in the U.S. Army, most recently after being recalled to active duty after 9/11. He served 12 years as Collin County Judge, and last year was elected as representative from Texas 3rd Congressional District, listing border security and immigration as one of his top issues. Congressman Self is normally in our audience, but tonight he'll be on the stage. And Keith, thanks for being here and taking on this duty. Our second panelist is also almost certainly known to everyone in the room. The Collin County Sheriff Jim Skinner is a 32-year law enforcement veteran, trial attorney, and former prosecutor, and was elected to his current post in 2017. Sheriff Skinner is nationally recognized for his leadership in a number of important law enforcement areas, including combating human and drug trafficking and child exploitation. And while Collin County is not on the southern border, he deals every day with the consequences of problems there. Sheriff Skinner also served 8 years in the U.S. Air Force. Jim, thanks for being with us tonight. Our third panelist may not be well known to our audience, but his command probably is. Brigadier General Matt Barker is commander of Joint Task Force Lone Star, activated in 2021 by Governor Abbott to assist the Texas Department of Public Safety in their mission to provide security along the Texas-Mexico border. In-place troops are augmented in May by the Texas Tactical Border Force to provide a targeted response to areas along the border. General Barker previously served as the Chief of Staff, Texas Air National Guard, and in his 31-year career has served in the United States and Europe in a variety of command and staff positions. General Barker, we were holding our breath that you would be able to be with us tonight, and we're sure glad to see you here. So with that introduction, I'd like to invite Congressman Self to the stage for opening remarks, followed by Sheriff Skinner and General Barker. After opening remarks, Congressman Self will moderate the discussion.
Well, thank you, John. It's good to be here with you again, and I will tell you it's an honor to be up here on the stage in the National Defense Briefing Series, because anyone that has a lieutenant in their military title normally has a general after it. And John Campbell must be running out of friends or something, because, but it's an honor to be here, General Campbell. I'm going to keep my remarks short. Because we have two true experts with us today who deal with it every day on the border. So from a national perspective, I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee on the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee. So that is the subcommittee that deals with the southern border to include the entire hemisphere. And I know that General Campbell wants to keep this non-political and apolitical, and I will try to do that, but I will tell you that from my perspective, the policy of the current administration is an open border. And I won't go into the politics of it, but I am absolutely convinced from 2 trips to the border that is the policy. I'm going to talk about not actually the southern border, but I am more concerned, or I am as concerned about further south, because Colombia has extremely lax visa requirements, and when you cross from Colombia into the south end of Panama, there's something called the Darien Gap. There are many people that come into Colombia and start their trek through the Darien Gap. Now, it's called the Darien Gap because there's no Inter-America highway there. There's a gap of many miles there, so that's why it got the name Gap. But it's about 160 miles wide. It's extremely mountainous, extremely jungle terrain. We could close it because within that 160 miles, and Panama wants to close it. So I am working on a trip to the Darien Gap because I want to see it for my own eyes, to see if the reports that I hear are true, which I'm sure they are, that the Red Cross passes out maps at the Darien Gap that shows people how their trek goes from the Darien Gap to our southern border. When I was interviewing illegal immigrants on the border, there are entire Facebook groups, social media groups that tell them how to make the trip to the southern border. The Texas side was littered with their bracelets that had on it the Spanish word delivery. Every person is simply a packet that the cartel delivers, and we're going to be getting into that hopefully with the general and the sheriff. Another thing that they pass out, your U.S. government passes out 2 women that are crossing the Darien Gap. They pass out what they call pre-rape kits. You can imagine what are in the pre-rape kits. Your government is passing them out. It is that dangerous. I believe that the southern border is one of the 2 actual existential threats to our republic. The other being our debt. The southern border is that dangerous, I believe, to our constitutional republic. The third theoretical existential threat as of now would be China. And I will tell you, I believe that the Chinese cartel cooperation is something that I hope our 2 gentlemen, our other speakers, get into. But we are very concerned in Congress about the China cartel relationship on the southern border. I know that China is, I believe, I can't say that I know, I believe that China is growing their trade with Mexico for the express purpose of evading U.S. tariffs. We know that China is no longer shipping fentanyl directly to the southern border. They're shipping the precursor chemicals, which are then mixed and put into pills. And now I'll give you my standard plea. If you have children and grandchildren, make sure they're getting their pills from authorized pharmacies. Do not let them borrow pills from anyone. Hopefully, Sheriff will cover that in greater detail. China is no doubt a major player in our illegal immigration. At a hearing just last week with the State Department, I almost laughed when they said they were going to resettle 200,000 immigrants. I almost laughed at them because somehow, somewhere, they're resettling on the order of several million. Mexico and Canada and China account for about 40% of our entire international trade, those three nations. Now, I'm not going to get into who's first and who's second, frankly, because I have the president of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce here, and if I got it wrong, the general would correct me. So let's just say that our trade is fairly balanced with Mexico and Canada. It is not so with China. We import far more than we export to China. I will tell you, there are two immigration systems. There is the legal system and there is the illegal system. I get asked all the time, when is Congress going to reform the legal immigration system? And my answer is, there is no appetite in Congress for the legal immigration system until we get a handle on the illegal immigration system. I believe that will come first. So that's kind of my congressional level overview, and I have questions for our two speakers. So again, General Campbell, thank you for the opportunity for doing this, and I will be followed by Sheriff Jim Skinner.
Thank you, Colonel Self. It's an honor for me to join you tonight. It's an honor to be on the stage with the likes of Colonel Keith Self. In my capacity serving on the Executive Committee for the National Sheriff's Association and as the Chairman of Government Affairs, I do unfortunately have to spend a significant amount of time on Capitol Hill. And there I have met many cowards, and it is always a pleasure to see someone as courageous as yourself, and I'm honored to have you as my congressman, just for the record. Before we get started, I want to tell all of you, thank you for allowing me to serve as your sheriff. It's a real privilege every day to come in and lead the brave men and women of the Collin County Sheriff's Office. I couldn't help but think when I came in tonight, I was kind of overcome with thoughts of my father. He was a combat veteran from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and he would be proud of the fact that I was standing here talking to so many military veterans. You would need days to talk about the border. In a simple phrase, there is no more border. The border is so completely out of control. It is the Wild West. I was on the border this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, with a meeting with Governor Ron DeSantis on the border in Sierra Vista, Arizona, and with a number of other sheriffs, where we had the opportunity to speak to the governor about the realities of what is taking place and how it affects our communities in the interior of the United States. There's a saying that every single sheriff is a border sheriff now, and that is certainly the case. So let me kind of set this up for my comments in a minute by saying that when I was elected sheriff in 2017, one of the things that I wanted to do, given the limited resources that I had at the sheriff's office with respect to narcotics investigations, all sheriffs have in common long stretches of roadway. And I got with 7 other sheriffs here in the North Texas area, and we sat down and had a talk and agreed that what we would do is we would try to form a task force, if you will, of deputies who were specially trained to work the highways to try to interdict the narcotics and human trafficking that the cartels were pushing across the border into the United States. So we began our work, and it took about 2 years to get everyone in the same uniform, driving the same cars, and agreements signed and approved by the various commissioners' courts, and get people trained. And so we actually started real full operations probably in January of 2020. Boy, that was good timing. That's all I can say. So before I make my comments, continue my comments, what I'd like to do is I would like to show you what the last year of that work looks like.
Can't have enough internet, especially when you're talking about finding children who've been kidnapped or abducted.
We just wanted to make a difference, and this is a way to make a difference.
Of course, Texas have a unique and special relationship with that. It's always been that way. And so what we're going to do is monopolize on that for the benefit of the citizens that we serve. That's the bottom line.
We need to pay attention to this. We absolutely must stay focused, and by working with all the other sheriffs in the North Texas area, it's a good, strong force multiplier, and I'm proud to be a part of the organization.
I didn't have a song long enough to show you what 2 years looks like. So in spite of the fact that we've seized hundreds of military-grade weapons and thousands of pounds of ammunition hidden in secret compartments, along with cash, $24 million in cartel cash to be exact, that we've seized, and $159 million worth of narcotics that we've seized northbound and coming from the east. In spite of the fact that we've made all these seizures, we've still suffered in Collin County a 1,320% increase in the number of fentanyl-related deaths since 2019. My statistics in Collin County are not as bad as many towns and villages and communities across the United States. One thing certainly is a fact is that I communicate with sheriffs from all over the country constantly, and these sheriffs are exhausted at what we see happening. And why is that? Well, General Campbell, I don't know how you have a conversation without being political, so I'll try not to be political. But just let me say that I have a 1,320% increase in the number of fentanyl-related deaths in Collin County over the last few years because, first of all, the Biden administration has abdicated its responsibility to secure our southern border. And I'm parsing my words carefully. The other reason is that this tsunami of death and destruction that flows across our southern border into the United States is all perpetrated and unimpeded by the Jalisco New Generation and Sinaloan cartels. They are our enemies, make no mistake about it. These two cartels are responsible for 95% of the criminal activity that flows across our southern border. Many other sheriffs in this country are like me, heartbroken. I am absolutely heartbroken, and don't think I can do it again, yet I do over and over and over again, meet with the parents of young kids who've died from a fatal fentanyl poisoning. Colonel Self is correct. In this country, we have the casual transference of prescription in our DNA. That's what we do, right? I got a headache. Well, I got a pill. Let me give you a pill, so on and so forth. I've met with parents of a 16-year-old who was at soccer practice, and when she came home, in her pocket, she had a pill that a friend gave her. She thought was a Percocet. She ate dinner with her family and went to bed, and they found her the next morning dressed in the same clothes across her bed, dead. I could tell you many stories like this. These are not narcotic abusers and drug addicts that are dying on a daily basis in this country. These are people that the cartels push these drugs across our southern border because it's a business model. And these are words straight from their mouths. They will tell you that it's of no consequence if we kill 100,000 Americans from drug overdoses in this country. That's just the cost of doing business. You guys are the ones with the drug appetite. There is a connection, and we'll talk more about it later, between China and organized crime in Mexico and how it's afflicted on us here in the United States. The problem on the border, it could be fixed in short order. And there are many things that could be done, especially from a law enforcement perspective, to have these problems. If I can just give you some perspective to understand how two administrations of government can make a difference. In Collin County, we had 17 fentanyl deaths from 2017 through the end of 2019. 17. To date, we've had almost 200 people die just with fentanyl. That's not counting all the other drug overdoses from illicit drugs that have come across our southern border since 2020. It is a problem. We are at war. Law enforcement, in many ways, is exhausted because here we are operating in a time period where it's not fashionable to be in law enforcement these days. When I see these young kids come to work and they raise their right hand and take that oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and of this state, I have an enormous amount of respect for them because everything is against them. Criminal justice reform, our ideals about social justice and these kinds of things in this country. Well, I'll tell you that it's much easier for me to do my job and to get these kind of results because I work in a community where I have citizens that support our efforts to do exactly this. I shudder to think what the death rate in Collin County would have been in our surrounding areas here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex had it not been for the 20 brave interdiction officers that do this kind of work on a daily basis. There's a lot to talk about. Hopefully we'll get into that. Like I said, I could stand up here and talk for days about specific things that are occurring down on the border. There is a difference. I will tell you, like one thing, for example, you might not have thought about. The general, and let me say, I am really proud of Greg Abbott. There's a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions, but I'll tell you straight up, that's a guy who is willing to do something to protect Texas. And sir, I appreciate your efforts, because I know what hard work goes on down on the border, and I've been down there, and that's a tough road to hoe. And it's a dangerous environment as well, and this is something that folks just don't know about. I often believe, and I often say, that if people really understood and knew the truth about what was happening on the border and how it inflicts so much death and destruction on a community, that there'd be people with pitchforks on the lawn of the White House. But that's not going to happen, and it's not going to happen because the media apparatus in the United States is simply not going to tell you the truth. And we know that firsthand. The National Sheriff's Association has come out with some very strong statements, some very detailed statements about what the problem is and our views on it. And it never saw the light of day, and it never will. But at any rate, sir, I appreciate your hard work. So I look forward to answering your questions here in just a few moments.
Now, General Barker, the commander of Lone Star, Joint Task Force Lone Star. Thank you, General, for being here.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to be here with you this evening as the commander of your Joint Task Force Lone Star. So, General Campbell, appreciate the invitation. Gentlemen, it's an honor to share the dais with great Texas patriots like you, and look forward to the discussion. So, I think one of the jumping off points, as the General said, you may not understand exactly what Joint Task Force Lone Star is. And that's where I'd like to spend just a few minutes kind of breaking down the organization and letting you know what your Texas soldiers, your Texas airmen, and your Texas State Guardsmen are doing along 1,254 miles of contiguous border this evening, every day, as we have for the last 2 years. So I am the third commander of Joint Task Force Lone Star, which is the military component of Operation Lone Star. And Governor Abbott, as we've mentioned, started Operation Lone Star 2 years ago to deter and interdict illegal immigration and associated criminal activity along those 1,254 miles of border. So I have the privilege of serving with over 5,000 guardsmen, and now including Florida and Tennessee National Guardsmen who have joined the line in the past couple weeks. And again, that's the military component, which then we support Texas Department of Public Safety as well as Texas Department of Emergency Management. One of the nuances here that you may not know if you're not familiar with the National Guard is regular federal military forces cannot participate in any law enforcement activity. You know, we're a constitutional republic, we don't want martial law. That does not apply to the National Guard when my state commander-in-chief, the governor, calls us out to assist in these kind of operations. So that's a small but important difference. So you'll hear about the federal mission. You'll hear about 1,500 federal soldiers coming down to do some things on the border. I will say we have really nothing to do with that, and their role is very constrained and very different from what your Texas Guardsmen are doing, and that's really what I'd like to get into. So we talked about that long stretch of border. It's fascinating. You know, when I left the regular Air Force, I took over the unit in Houston, so I've lived in Houston, moved out to El Paso, and now I live down in the RGV where our Joint Task Force headquarters is in McAllen, Texas, which has been the nexus of activity over the past couple weeks. When Title 42 expired, you probably saw the live feeds from Brownsville and our guardsmen doing great work there with our state troopers. But the entire border has its challenge and is very different, in terms of the types of threat. We see what we call traffic. Do we see family units in some places hey, there are some people who are just looking for a better life. We're going to deter them. We're going to tell them this is unsafe and this is the right way to do it. But a lot of our traffic is a lot more nefarious. So we've interdicted over 33,000 in the past 2 years smuggling operations, be that weapons, people, or the narcotics that we've talked about. And I hope we'll get into that, but very proud of that. In addition, we've turned back 100,000 illegal migrants or diverted them to the port of entry, which is really the appropriate thing. And so I'll tell you, I'm not going to be at all political. This is binary for me. My orders are to hold the line and deter illegal immigration. And I don't care why you came. I don't care what your circumstances are. My soldiers, my airmen, and I were human beings. We're compassionate people, or else we wouldn't be wearing this cloth. We're not going to let anyone get hurt down there. But you know, the free ride is done. So I hope you've seen that in your coverage. And again, that is Operation Lone Star at its finest. One of the things I mentioned in Brownsville a couple weeks ago to the media was that Operation Lone Star, Joint Task Force Lone Star, we want to leverage our asymmetric capabilities. So there's a lot of things you see in the press with my soldiers and airmen doing. There's some things you don't see as well. You might not see our small unmanned aerial systems, which are a force multiplier that help us keep track of the migrant flow and get in to interdict that criminal activity. Your Texas Guardsmen are operating boats. You know, a lot of that border is riverine operations, so there's some places it doesn't make sense to get into without a boat. So again, that's an area where we have Army, Air, and then our State Guard, which is our, you know, Texas is lucky we have a state militia, if you will, what some states call a state defense force. So that's the third part of the Texas Military Department, the Army, Air, and then the Texas State Guard. The Texas State Guard has some unique capabilities. They're never armed. They're a volunteer organization, but when they come on mission, like we are with Lone Star, they get paid at whatever their equivalent rank is. And we rely on them for a lot of the boat handling. Interestingly enough, one of the challenges we're going to talk about is, I think a lot of people in here would say, well, why don't you just arrest all these people coming across and put them in jail? Well, where are you going to put them? I'm not sure how big Sheriff Skinner's jail is, but when you look at the nature of the problem, and that is the pain that's inflicted on these border towns when you're in Rio Bravo, when you're in Eagle Pass, when you're in Brownsville. So where I'm going with this is, one of the ways that the Texas Military Department has been able to help with those state guardsmen who are paralegals is to go into the county courthouses and help neck down that backlog of the cases that we are actually trying to prosecute. So small UAS boat operations, you've seen our engineers improving physical security up and down the border. They've laid over 75 miles of concertina wire. They've put up 75 miles of fencing. So it's whack-a-mole. The problem is not going to end. You're not going to, you know, close up and say, okay, border's secure. So it's always going on, and the physical security is a big part of that. We have teams going out in the middle of the night with state troopers and actually chasing folks, you know, criminals, until we make the apprehension. So as the sheriff mentioned, it's a very demanding environment. It's hot out there, it's dark, it's a contact sport. There is gunplay, and you know, you don't have to worry about the bullet with your name on it. You have to worry about the one addressed to whom it may concern, and a lot of times that's what we see with these transnational criminal organizations engaging in gunplay in the border, and our soldiers can just happen to be in a dangerous spot. Of course, it's a contact sport in that we have lost one soldier, Sergeant Bishop Evans, who perished trying to rescue illegal aliens, basically out of the goodness of his own heart, making that decision to go in and risk his own life, and made the ultimate sacrifice. So tough environment, but my orders are to hold the line. I will tell you, in 31 years in uniform, this is the most important mission I've ever been involved in. This is Texans serving Texas. So if they choose, you know, we want to make this the worst place to try and illegally cross the border, whatever that looks like. I tell my soldiers and airmen that Operation Lone Star is a humanitarian operation, first and foremost. It's a humanitarian operation with a large security component, but we are trying to mitigate suffering, both from our citizens in our Texas border towns, as well as the people who are being exploited by transnational criminal organizations, as the sheriff said, which is a big part of this. And so it's a big challenge. But when people hear that I'm the JTF commander, there's usually, and some people here tonight have said, "Oh, lucky you," right? Like that's not a good thing. I will tell you, I love my job. I will tell you, we're making a difference. When you look at the National Guard, this is the guardiest mission in the history of the Guard. I mean, my guardsmen are literally defending their own backyards. My guardsmen who live in El Paso and hold the line in El Paso. My guardsmen who live in Brownsville and hold the line in Brownsville. Now, we also have guardsmen from Fort Worth who are serving 7-8 hours away from their families, and that's a challenge for me as a leader to take care of them too, because this is an enduring mission. It's been going on for 2 years, and from where I sit, I don't think the legislature has any appetite to pare back on it, but regardless, we're going to continue to hold the line until properly relieved. And so before we get into the questions, which is the really important thing, I did just want to say, please keep our guardsmen in your thoughts and prayers, because it is very dangerous. A lot of people don't understand the sacrifices they're making, the challenges they're making. I'm blessed in that most of my force of over 5,000 guardsmen are volunteers, and most of them who have been on the mission a year have asked to stay. We had the Florida soldiers come in, which is always, as a leader, an operational risk management challenge. How many of these soldiers speak Spanish well? Coming from Florida, they understand heat and humidity. That's good. But, it is a challenge. So they were supposed to be with us for 2 weeks, and as I trooped the line down in Eagle Pass and spoke with them, I was astonished in how happy they were, how glad to be there, and we've actually had 100 of them ask and get permission to stay longer. And so they should have been home a week ago, and they decided they want to stay because they know that Texas security is national security, and the work your guardsmen are doing is very important, and you should be very, very proud of them. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Okay, there were a couple of acronyms there. The RGV is the Rio Grande Valley, which is where the general now lives, in case you didn't catch that one. And he addressed the transnational criminal organizations. I should have mentioned that because in Texas, in Congress, we are having a conversation, should we designate the cartels as terrorist organizations? The problem with that, and I want to explain the difference, if you declare them a terrorist organization, that opens up asylum claims. If you designate them a terrorist, a transnational criminal organization, it does not automatically confer criminal asylum claim status. It's a vital difference that we need to all understand. So for the general, I'd like to start with you. Can you address, and I think you've got a microphone there, can you address the governor's recent moves with the Texas Tactical Border Force, the pontoons, and maybe go a little bit more into the State Guard forces from the other states? So talk to us about those three issues, if you would.
So the Texas Tactical Border Force is approximately 500 soldiers, which are pre-identified, pre-trained. In the Guard, we have the challenge of it's not always instant readiness. So you might think that, your guardsman is there ready to deploy on a moment's notice, but in fact, they might only qualify on their weapons as part of a pre-deployment training such as this. So the Texas Tactical Border Force was specially stood up to be able to flow to augment our existing 5 regional task forces, which is how we're set up, and basically surge forces to where the weight of effort is in any given one time. And they then reset after the increased period of activity. They're able to go back to their organic units and reset. And then in addition, when we deployed the Texas Tactical Border Force, we also deployed our Quick Reaction Force, which are military police who are trained in civil disturbance, what we would call riot control, because we weren't sure with Title 42 expiring just what kind of trouble we could be seeing, particularly in Brownsville, but in other places as well. So, and those soldiers, that's a core mission for military police, as some of you may know. So that force, the QRF, Quick Reaction Force, is also ready. And then finally, sir, you asked about the State Guard. So again, the State Guard is the third part of the Texas Military Department. And, you know, when I show up for drill or for my annual training, just like any other guardsman, you know, I get paid for that. I get paid my regular Air Force salary. When I'm on state active duty, as I am in my capacity as the task force commander, I get a state paycheck. I don't get any federal money. No federal dollars are going towards Operation Lone Star. It is 100% funded by the state of Texas, to include ammunition, to include maintenance on our boats, to include if we have a shortfall in federally furnished equipment like body armor, we're going to use state funds to make up that shortfall. So the State Guard ordinarily does not get paid even when they drill. It's purely volunteer, heavy on medical skills, heavy on information technology skills, paralegals, boat operations. But when they are on mission with us as part of Operation Lone Star, that is their full-time job, and they get paid what their equivalent military rank would be, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about the cartels. Now, I've got lots of questions here. Sheriff, we'll start with you. I was under the impression it was more than two that control the border. Where do they control? Because I think we know the actual areas that individual cartels control. How much money do they, I won't say earn, do they get doing these operations? And what types of businesses are they actually operating?
Well, that's a great question. So the cartel, it's over $1 billion a year industry that they operate, you know, here in the United States. I mean, you talk about control, these transnational criminal organizations, and like I said, again, the Sinaloans and the Jalisco New Generation control 95% of it. The Gulf Cartel and others exist only because they're allowed to exist, because their operations also serve the purpose of the two big players. The cartels they have relationships around the world in order to move money. You know, one of the things that we haven't talked about is the vast amount of money that moves within the United States. So if you talk about money laundering, for example, when the cartels launder their money, typically what we see is in cooperation with the Chinese. You always hear about the Chinese sending precursors, originally fentanyl, to Mexico, and then it was transferred into the United States, and then you heard about precursors. But all of that is just part of the overall money laundering scheme that operates. So when drugs are sold and cash is accumulated and cash is moved by a number of various means, either overland or in the air. And of course, the favorite way to move money in the United States is just to put it in a bag, walk through TSA, get on an airplane, and fly with it. You can walk, you know, with $500,000 in cash, and unless one of our interdictors are there on the gangway to interdict you and seize the money, you can move the money, and they understand that. So what happens is they move money to the West, and then what they do is they Chinese organized crime then takes that cash, US dollars, and they loan that money to Chinese folks on the West Coast. And then when they repay those loans, that money is paid directly to banks in China. So it's converted to yen. And then what the cartels do is, through a number of different companies and such in Mexico, they then buy products from China, but typically that's what you see as the precursors come in, and then all this is converted into pesos. So it's in cooperation. They all work together in these schemes, and you can't help but think, of course, on the Chinese side, it's not done without the permission of the Chinese government.
I will add that there are really three major businesses the way we understand it. It's the human trade. Then they pay money to come across the border. There's the drug trade that we talked about. There's also the sex trade. And a senior cop in Houston told me that the sex trade in Houston is up to $68 billion a year.
Yeah.
Sheriff, would you like to address that, please?
And of course, that's one of the things we do here with our child exploitation unit is we work very aggressively against that. We've arrested over 200 people here in Collin County in crimes, that are affiliated with that. But it is an enormous amount of money in the trade of flesh, and they understand that because unlike drugs, which is a perishable, their mentality is that when in human trafficking and the sex trade, it's a commodity that they can use over and over and over again. In addition to that, no one crosses the southern border that they don't pay the cartels. If you do, you're risking your life, okay, as in dead. So everyone pays a minimum of $7,000, but typically that number's around $8,000 a person, every single person that crosses the border. And right now there's 11,000 people a day crossing the border.
So how did they pay back the $7,000 or $8,000, and it could be more? How did they pay that back?
Well, a lot of different ways. I mean, that's a great question. We certainly know that many of the people that cross the border, the cartels, rather than use their cartel soldiers anymore to move cash and drugs in the United States, they're using these people in order to pay that off. If they're not, many people that cross have accumulated the cash and pay it. For those that don't, they owe the cartels. And of course, you either enter into the sex trade or you're going to be enlisted to help move their illicit products in the United States.
Or you could be an indentured servant in the United States repaying that. We have indentured servanthood in the United States today. General, would you like to comment on that?
I don't have a lot to add in terms of the criminal elements, the volume and so forth. Definitely defer to the sheriff's expertise. We do see, it's interesting to me, the first apprehension I was involved in when I came on mission, there was a group of 10, and there were 2 Chinese nationals there. And, I'm pretty sure they're not coming for a better life. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other avenues open to them that they could have pursued other than sneaking across the river by Rio Bravo at, close to midnight. The one area, though, that I just want to go back to the collateral damage that all this causes in our border communities in terms of high-speed chases, in terms of the overdoses that we already addressed. So people who don't live on the border don't understand it, don't understand how overwhelmed these communities are, and that's the real tragedy. I'll just leave it at that, sir.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to the money that we believe that the cartel controls. We think that it's actually several $100 billion because they've seized things such as the avocado trade now. So the cartels are becoming a multinational corporation just in the illegal sense. Sheriff, can you talk about the small border counties? We live in Collin County. You have a jail that's 1,100 and building on, but I was in a small border county jail with, can you just talk about what the small border counties experience, please?
Sure. I said earlier that all sheriffs consider themselves a border county. I have a 1,298-bed jail here, and we're in the process of a 5-phase jail expansion that's going on. Right now, I have 50 inmates that are residing out in West Texas because we're stuffed to the gills here. Imagine that if you're a sheriff on the border and you've got a small jail and you've already got your standard public safety apparatus in place used to service your community, and your jails are also full because all jails suffer that problem in Texas these days. And then on top of that, you have this stream of people coming into the United States, and I hate to tell you, but many of them are criminals. There's a reason that many of the people that cross the border into the United States take their identification and all the money out of their pockets and they drop it within 10 yards of the fence before they cross into the United States. I could take you to a number of different places on the Arizona U.S. border where you can walk across into Mexico and just walk along and pick up a hatful of identification cards from various countries from all over the world where people have abandoned their ID and their money and when they cross into the United States. Because the game here is to claim asylum. Now, you would think, the international laws of asylum say that when you're claiming asylum, when you get out of your country, the first country you come to, you should claim asylum, right? But what we have here is people coming across 7 or 8 different countries before they get to the United States. They all come in and they all request asylum. So the border communities are completely inundated. When you talk to the sheriffs there, like the general said, the high-speed chases, you have a collection of killers and thugs that are in charge of those communities. And it's all law enforcement can do just to keep their head above water and fight back and push back against what we see. Even here in Collin County, and we are extremely aggressive in Collin County. Our message every day to the cartel is, if you come here to do business, buddy, you're going to have to work for it. But still, the way they've changed their tactics and all these kinds of things. The general talked about these high-speed chases. The day was when we threw the lights on couriers, they would pull over, and our interdictors carry on a conversation. Usually within just a few moments, they'd know whether or not there's a load on that car. Well, now you turn the lights on, you better get ready because the chase is on. I've even had to resort to buying these high-speed Ford Mustangs now to put my interdictors in. And by the way, we don't take federal money either, sir, to run our operation. We do it with the cartel's money.
Okay, let's go to questions. The first question is for the general. What is the status of the border wall that had been started?
So the federal wall, as you've seen what I've seen in the press, basically has been delayed. So I can really only speak to, again, the barrier that my engineers are laying, which has been effective, but it's a continuous battle as migrants damage, the wire or fencing. We have to replace that. We're trying again, innovation is very important to try and give the Texas taxpayer as much as we can for their money, and so we're trying some floating barriers, which should be deploying very soon, which will be mobile as well. I think the key thing, sir, is that anytime we talk about the federal wall, they still have gates in them, and if those gates are being open to process migrants, then there might as well not be a wall there at all. For me, again, the tactical problem is very simple: is we're going to deter people and try and block them from getting in, and we've had some success doing that, and we keep trying to innovate with new techniques for that.
To that point, can you address the pontoons, the mid-river barrier?
So that, I think it was on Fox News this morning, one of the programs was discussing it, but there are certain areas in the river that are favorable for these large floating barriers that have technology underneath so that people can't get around them. It's very difficult to get over them. Again, we're not trying to get anyone hurt down there, but we're trying to implement measures that show how difficult it's going to be if someone chooses to cross illegally. So I'm not sure exactly when those are going to be coming online, those floating barriers, but they are going to be, we hope, an integral part of the effort.
Okay, I'll take one. Is there any leverage constitutionally to stop this attack on our border? The legislative branch has the power of the purse, and we can make the laws. There is a reason that the executive branch is called the execution branch. They execute the laws or they don't. So we can have certain sanctions against executive branch officials, which we're actually working on, but that's about it, because the executive branch holds the operational control of the border, whether it be at the federal level or at the state level. And then you're going to ask me, what about the invasion clause in the Constitution? That's up to the governor, and I will ask the general to address that should he care to.
Yes, sir. So that's one of the problems if, there's a public sentiment, well, why can't we just kind of round these people up? Because this is a state operation, there has to be a state crime that we can assist DPS in apprehending them for. So if someone jumps over the wire, there's really not going to be an appetite to pursue any charges against that individual. It's really not feasible. If someone damages the concertina wire that Texas engineers have laid, then they're damaging Texas state property, and in that case, Department of Public Safety, assisted by Texas guardsmen, can make an arrest. But it's not quite as intuitive when you have the perhaps federal issues which are not being prosecuted or addressed.
What is the ROE for your guardsmen to use their weapon?
So like any American soldier, airman, sailor, Marine, my guardsmen have the right of self-defense, and so that's why they carry weapons. Some people have said, well, why are they carrying the M4 carbine? Why are they carrying a long rifle? Well, because that's the weapon that most of our soldiers and airmen are trained and qualified on, so that's the one that it's safest for them to be carrying. So the rules of use of force are in self-defense. Beyond that, it's really, we're looking to our Department of Public Safety partners and following their cues. Anytime that we are going to apprehend in a migrant who's suspected of criminal activity, we want that to be in the presence of Department of Public Safety because they are the experts. And really, for that rule, if you will, it's no different than, in Texas, any peace officer can direct any citizen to assist them with an arrest, and if they're physically capable of doing so, that's what they need to do. And so really that's with my guardsmen, that's how that works, sir.
I would say if they're carrying the M4, in many cases they're going to be outgunned. I believe that's another point. You do not want to take a pistol to a rifle fight. I got one here. Please comment on the effort to pass an authorization for the use of military force to engage the cartels directly in Mexico. The AUMF is, we have 25 of them actually in effect today, dating back to the 70s. We are in Congress, we're looking to repeal many of those authorizations to use military force. Because many of them haven't been used in years. What this means is direct military action against the cartels in Mexico. That's what the euphemism means, and I don't think there's any appetite in Congress for us to do that yet. And I'll put that caveat at the end of that. So I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. Some of these questions really do not belong to any of the three of us up here. They're judicial questions. They're appetite for drugs in Texas and in the U.S. It's certainly an issue because we are the ones that are consuming the drugs, but we're talking here about securing the border. When did the illegal immigration begin in great numbers and why?
Well, I can tell you that there's a correlation between the number of deaths we see in the United States from fatal fentanyl poisonings and the number of seizures that we make for illicit drugs traveling across the open highway and the surges that we see come across the border. So you understand that when the cartels get a group of people and they target specific areas where they send them across. Well, when that happens, downriver or at some other place, they have an operation in place to push drugs across at the same time. And the effort is to tie up law enforcement and the United States Border Patrol with the people, this 11,000 people that are crossing the border every day in order for them to push drugs across at another location. Now, The border is a long place, all the way out to San Diego, and it's different in New Mexico and Arizona and California than the picture that you see here in Texas. You may not know it, but probably half of the drugs that enter into the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, they don't come across from South Texas. They come to us from the west. They come to us from Arizona, across the frontier in Arizona. They have people, lookouts in the rugged mountains there all along the border. They operate a fleet of drones. Their intelligence is very good. If you're in Arizona, there's only a United States Border Patrol agent once every 25 miles, okay? You can look as far as you can see over the horizon is a 21-foot tall giant fence that runs as far as you can see as it goes over the horizon. And then when you drive down the fence, you see giant 20-foot gates that are wide open. So it's when I came back from Sierra Vista the other day, Colonel Self, I was at the 35-mile checkpoint on a road that, I think I saw 2 cars the entire time on my way to Tucson. We pulled up to the checkpoint. There was a border patrolman there to talk to us, and there were 3 of them sitting under an umbrella. And I know the border patrolman would prefer to be down on the border, but they're not down on the border. Then when I got to the airport and I got on the plane, I just thought about the irony that I had 2 military-age African males sitting next to me. Both of them had the ICE tags on their bags. I tried to communicate with one of them. Neither one of them spoke English, but finally he showed me a ticket, so I grabbed it and I looked at it. They were both headed to Cincinnati. So when they come across and they're processed, it's a little handheld device. They enter some data, they take a biometric, either iris or a photograph or a fingerprint imprint, and then they're collected, they're issued a burner cell phone, an airline ticket, and they're on their way.
And to follow up on that, do either of you have an idea of the cost for each illegal to the American people? No, I didn't think so. So for General Barker, what type of state crime would help you deter them? State crime law would help you deter them. In other words, what help do you need from the Texas legislature?
The one area that I know Governor Abbott discussed in Brownsville the other week was the problem of U.S. citizens being complicit in some of this trafficking. So my understanding is there's basically an illegal Uber app that the cartel has put forward that as soon as these folks get across, they just punch in, they want a pickup, and they've got, several U.S. citizens racing to pick them up to get that cartel money. So I know Governor Abbott specifically is looking at legislation to take care of something like that. I think as Congressman Self said, enforcing the existing border laws is a good start, state or federal or otherwise.
So juveniles from all across the United States travel to the southwest border in order to pick a load up and bring them to a major city, and they can make $2,500 for doing it. Law enforcement is constantly running across these kids with carloads of migrants that have crossed into the United States illegally, and many times, tragically, there's these high-speed chases and crashes and loss of life and these kinds of things. But they advertise all across social media in order to get mostly juveniles to make these loads. And the reason they do that is because our laws are such that juveniles are dealt with not nearly as harsh as an adult is, okay? Now, with respect to the laws in Texas, what helps us is recently the legislature has proposed, and we expect it to be signed into law, where we can criminalize for the different degrees of murder, depending on the mens rea, for the delivery and control delivery or distribution of fentanyl. If you sell fentanyl and someone dies as a result of it, you can be charged for murder. And so I can tell you that, it's going to be manpower everywhere that dictates what happens. I will tell you that we've already started working on these cases and putting together these cases with the intent to charge people for murder when they sell fentanyl and it results in somebody's death. A lot of people are like myself, resources. We've been strapped for resources here and there. I know that in my budget this year, last year I asked for 17 deputies and I got 2. This year I intend to squeal a lot louder. I need deputies. I'm understaffed, and part of those deputies are deputies assigned to work narcotics. We need street-level narcotics investigators in order to target and go after these people that are peddling this fentanyl in our communities.
Who would like to talk to us about sophisticated technology? What is the most sophisticated technology? Balloons, drones? Do we have dispersed sensors?
So as I mentioned, we do have small unmanned aerial systems that we deploy to the border, just like Department of Public Safety does. We do have military-grade sensors, infrared and other opticals that we deploy down there. So that's mostly what we're doing. And then it's not high-tech, but again, the impact that our riverine operations, that our boats have, and being able to get into some places. And then we're open to anything. And the floating barrier is a good example of that. So I think just the scale of this problem, there hasn't been anything like it. And so we're learning some things as we go, and 2 years into it. And, we've had the National Guard in Texas on the border for, more than 25 years, going back. It's just never been for this scope and duration. We've had smaller deployments, some with federal partners, some like Operation Lone Star, which is just solely a Texas effort. But in any of those cases, we try and leverage the technology that our partners bring in, but also be looking for new things as well. Because the cartel, they're adapting as well, and they're using technology in different ways. And so we have to make sure that we're not predictable, that we're keeping our forces safe, and that we're refining our tactics and procedures.
So when you talk about technology on the local level, from an enforcement and a public safety apparatus standpoint for us, it's really 2 things that we use routinely, and the first would be pole cameras. When we develop intelligence, for example, about a particular stash house, we'll implement a pole camera, and at the sheriff's office in our operations center, we can monitor those activities, and we do that frequently. The second thing is the use of automatic license plate readers. We're one of those agencies here in the North Texas Sheriff's Criminal Interdiction Unit. We aggressively use the automatic license plate readers, which are an enormous amount of help. But there's problems as well with that, and we have tried to lobby the federal government for 3 years now, trying to get them to consolidate the LPR reads into one database, preferably under the Drug Enforcement Administration. But they just absolutely refuse to do it. So you have all this information in different silos. So here's the practical application. When my deputy stops somebody roadside and we query the automatic license plate readers, which, as you might imagine, would be helpful, right? If we saw on an LPR read that somebody was caught on a read in Nebraska only 2 days ago going westbound, and then we caught him on a read coming back eastbound 48 hours later, well, does that mean that he's carrying drugs? No. But when you have a conversation with him and you ask him where he's been, and he tells you that he's been down in San Antonio for a week with grandma on a visit, well, then you know between the combination of the two, he's lying and he's probably carrying a load. So we use automatic license plate readers, and what we need to do is, instead of being roadside and having to query 20 different databases for reads, you would think that the federal government is sophisticated enough that they would put all those reads into one place and allow us to do one search for automatic license plate reads. During the last administration, we were making lots of progress. It looked like it was going to happen, and of course, all that's hit a wall, and we just haven't been able to accomplish any of that.
Sheriff, did you just accuse the federal government of being sophisticated?
Well,
You don't, it was a
Colonel, don't
rhetorical
get me
question.
started, sir.
It's a rhetorical question. I want to give you something to think about. It is the reason we don't put the military into law enforcement in situations is because of posse comitatus. We're not authorized to do law enforcement. I believe that we need, as a nation, to get past the idea of posse comitatus on this international border. This is an international border. This is not law enforcement. This is defending our border just as we would defend the beaches in North Carolina or in California. That's an issue to me at the federal level, and it's an issue that Congress will have to deal with, because right now the theory is that it's law enforcement to catch people coming across an international border. I believe it's a national issue. That's something to think about. That's your homework. So now, for the two of you, so I'll start with the general. What are the top things that would help you? People, resources, authorities. What are the top things that would help you do your job? People, resources, do you need authority? You need new law? What do you need?
I think the primary need is the one we're addressing here, which is just letting the public know about the work that's being done and the work that still needs to be done, because I think a lot of it has been ignored in the media, and so making sure that we tell our story, because again, your guardsmen are doing great things on the border, and they are making a difference. Sometimes it can feel like a small difference, but there it is. I think the physical improvements are an area where there's just no end to the appetite for us, and so my engineers are just out there working, improving the physical security, and I think that innovation in those areas is going to be what is the best way forward. I think our force mix is pretty good. I think we're pretty well right-sized in terms of sustainability. I tell my folks this is a marathon, not a sprint. And again, I am blessed that most of my soldiers and airmen and state guardsmen are volunteers to be there. So I think in terms of resources, the people are right. The authorities, again, we're going to defer a lot to DPS for any kind of apprehensions. I think we have bipartisan backing in Austin for our soldiers and airmen who are on this mission, and so that's very important. But I think we just need to continue looking at ways for technology to be able to fill in the blanks where we can't have a guardsman standing, where it's too dangerous to, where it just makes more sense to use technology to improve the understanding. So I guess where I'm going with that is some of the things I've talked about already. We could probably benefit from more small unmanned aerial systems, and we're already looking at ways to improve our riverine fleet of boats.
From my perspective, two things. First of all, you cannot expect any law enforcement organization to keep up with the everyday in and out performance of their duties, answering calls for the public and assisting the public in the way that we're expected to do, and fight ruthless thugs and killers who are trying to poison our communities with drugs and crime if you don't have the resources to do it. So I used to complain that it was those that make those decisions, right? Commissioners who determine what our budgets are and those kind of things. But really, that's not where it's at. It's up to you. It's up to you. You determine what kind of community you want to live in. So when it comes to resources for the sheriff's office, it has to be up to you to talk to the people that need to be talked to about whether or not that happens or not. The second thing is, all of you veterans and families, military families who understand the word of sacrifice, you truly understand what that means. We're a country of laws, not of men, okay? We all understood that when we put on the uniform and served this country. We have to have people in Congress like this guy. We have to have people that respect the rule of law. And we have to have people that understand you may not like it, but if you don't like it, then you go to Congress and you pass laws to change it. Don't just decide that you're not going to do it, okay? We have a lot of communities, they call them sanctuary cities in this country, where lots of virtue signaling takes place until a couple of bus loads of migrants show up and get dropped off on you. And then everybody's freaking out and wants to activate the National Guard and everything else. My point here is, the law should apply to everyone. And we have laws about immigration and they're being ignored, and that's the problem.
Segue from your answer to the question, who is responsible for moving illegals to other states? And if other states agree to take illegals, would that matter? I'll actually take that one. We've moved a minuscule number of illegal immigrants to other states, both Texas and Florida. Minuscule. I think we're up to 18,000, isn't that the figure I've seen? That's a minuscule number compared to the number that are coming across our border. And yet what happened? The sanctuary cities, I think one of the states did activate the National Guard. And they are moving them out of their sanctuary cities into the suburbs, whatever the suburbs are in the northern states. So the point here, we're trying to get everybody to realize the danger. And the sheriff said it several times, there is no state, there is no county in this nation that is not a border county or state. The cartel's fingers are throughout the United States. Their control is throughout the United States. They have, how do you think these people that come across the border and then get moved to a different state, how are they going to pay off their $8,000? The cartel has someone that's going to dun them for it. They're going to pay with their job salaries or whatever. They're going to pay. That's simply the state, but the minuscule number of illegal immigrants that we have bused to other states has made a huge difference in the attitude of the nation. It was brilliant. I mean, the fact that we've done so few makes it even more impactful. We've only got a few minutes left. General, do you have any closing comments for the group?
I just want to thank everyone for coming and taking an interest, especially our cadets, midshipmen here that focus at this early stage on national security. Some good lessons learned to be had from all the people in this room. And again, just please keep your guardsmen in your thoughts and prayers. We're going to keep doing this job until properly relieved, and the public support we've gotten is very gratifying, and it makes a difference. But big challenge, but your Texas Military Department is up for it. And again, now we've got other states starting to come online, which is a testimony to the great work and the success. And also, I hope will be a model for cooperation going forward as we continue tackling these tough challenges. But really appreciate your support.
Okay, before you close here, Sheriff, I see he's got the microphone, so we may have a question in the audience. Oh, Mr. Murray.
Congressman, yeah, I tell you what, certainly the last thing that I want to do as a former member of the media is talk about politics. But I'll simply say this. I'm embarrassed, having spent 30 years in the media, and what goes on today. Because it used to be, if you had an opinion, that was an editorial. But other than that, you told what happened on every single day. So my question to all of you, or to all three of you, is this. As we get ready to leave here, I want to play off, first of all, something that Sheriff Skinner shared with us. Maybe it was the general. But one of you said that every day, 11,000 people are coming in. I figured that out. That means by the election, 2.5 years from now, we'll have 10 million people will have come into the United States of America. That's said and done. And with all the incredible information all three of you have shared with us today, again, I don't want to sound like a newsman, but I always like to know what the take-home is. You've spent time with us. We'll all walk out of here and we'll say, wow, that was really well worth it. And wow, just incredible wow factor. But here's my question to all three of you. What is the one thing that you worry most about when you get home, when you leave here tonight, and you know what you deal with every single day, and we have no earthly idea what that is? When all three of you put your head on your pillow tonight, what is the thing that concerns you most, or the thing that you fear most about what is going on in our country right now? And number two, as a result of what you share with us, what do we do? What is the take-home as we walk out that door? What do you want us to tell our friends and family and our community members what we need to do to get things back to the way it used to be in the United States of America? What is our homework assignment? What do we share? What's the take-home out that door? I'll sit down. Thank you very much. All three of you have been great.
Well, thank you for that, Scott. I'll go ahead and start. And the thing that concerns me most about our nation is apathy. We have had it so good for so long. My mother turns 91 years old next month. She'll be 91. So she was born at the start of the Great Depression. She lived through World War II as a young girl, teenager, and so now she's 91 years old. That is the last generation that saw generational deprivation. Now, we've had cases of it, but not nationally. Not nationally. I mean, we can talk about the individuals, but nationally, that is the last generation. China, some people still think of China as the big warehouse in the sky that Amazon delivers to you. Yeah. That has got to change. It's apathy. We just concluded an election yesterday. It was a runoff election for county-wide positions. The entire county could vote in that election for something that's vitally important, because our universities are now laboratories of socialism. Yeah. This was for the College Board. We had 4% of eligible voters vote in the election yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, that is apathy. And I've listed my three: the debt. Now, there's a passage in the Bible where Hezekiah is told that the Jews are going to suffer in the future, and he says, okay, that's fine, it'll be good in my lifetime. We cannot have that attitude. Our debt is dangerous. I've forgotten which one it was, but a retiring chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff recently was asked, retiring chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, what is the greatest danger to our nation today? And he said, the national debt. The national debt. So the debt and these 10 million people that may come across, and then China, those are all given time existential threats. So if you care about your children and your grandchildren, you need to get on the stick. And I'll stop there before I get to preaching. Sheriff?
You cannot operate a public safety apparatus today with the same mentality that you had in January of 2017. You cannot do it. When I go to bed at night, I worry about the lives of the men and women that work for me, and I worry about your lives, and I'll put it in perspective for you. During the Trump administration, there were 17 people on the terror watch list that were captured crossing the southern border. Since the Biden administration has been into office, there have been almost 200 people on the terror watch list that have been captured. There are many gotaways, and do not think for 2 seconds with the number of people in this world that hate us, that there are not people that are a substantial threat to this country that have come into this country. But folks, again, and I can't overemphasize this, it takes resources to fight this problem. You have a lot of people that are very dedicated. You can't work for me, for example, unless you've demonstrated that you're willing to take an AR-15 and run into gunfire and put down a person who's trying to kill others, okay? I say that because there's a lot of brave men and women that are doing the job, but in many places in this country, including here, people are exhausted because they're trying to do too much without enough help. So it's resources, number one. The message I would have for you, don't give up hope. Let me tell you something, man, we're Americans, and we've been through some tough stuff in our nation's history. And we're going to get through this too. And we're going to deal with this, and we will ultimately get this right, and we will get back to where we need to be. Because at the end of the day, by God, we are Americans, okay?
Amen.
For me, pretty simple question. The only thing really that I worry about is the welfare of my soldiers, airmen, and state guardsmen. And I tell them when I'm out on the points that if they care 10% about the mission as much as I care about them, as my sergeant major cares about them, then the mission will take care of itself, and it does. But it is a contact sport. It's a dangerous environment. They're putting a lot of miles on vehicles. They're out in bad weather. You know, as we've seen, people tragically drown in the Rio Grande every year, and that's even factoring out the violence from criminal activity, and as you know, the sheriff mentioned, you know, just the emotional wear and tear as we go through this marathon, not a sprint. I think as the still serving guy on stage, I'll say not a necessarily strictly a border security question, but the larger national security question of there being less and less of a propensity to serve in America's youth, to join the military, explore the military as a career, and I'm not here to say why that is. One definite reason is that, you know, that propensity to serve, it's been identified if there's not an influencer, you know, mom, dad, uncle, cousin who has served in uniform. And we're seeing as the numbers of people who have served diminishes, and you know, as you know, sir, the number of veterans in Congress is lower than it has been. That's the way the trend's been going. So I think it's just really important that those of us who have worn the uniform, and I think events like this are perfect to help underscore that commitment that, you know, doesn't stop when you take the uniform off, but also how we're going to ensure the next generation of patriots is going to be there to carry the torch forward.
Well, I will speak for all three. It's been an honor to be here tonight. General, I'll turn it back over to you. So.
Well, as the congressman takes his seat, to all three of you, I think obviously the fact that everybody was on their feet speaks volumes. You know what a standing ovation means. So thank you to all three of you. Well done. You have no idea what you shared with us and what we'll take to our friends and family and certainly to our communities. Well done. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Now, I know that you probably have enough plaques and enough pictures and all kinds of memorabilia in your homes and wherever, but we do have some party gifts That, yeah, you thought this was Oprah or something, right? Okay, we do have party gifts here. And what we have is a little something, as we said, for Congressman Self, that's Project 25 in McKinney, which provides outreach and support to empower vulnerable children right around the world. Okay, very good. For Sheriff Skinner, the Sheriff Fund, which supports sheriff's personnel and families in times of crisis. And we certainly have plenty of that going on right now. So thank you, Sheriff, for all you continue to do. And for General Barker, the Disabled American Veterans, it helps with veterans and, well, health care as well, disability support, education, financial benefits. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, as we all well know. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, our half of the proceeds as well from the 50-50 raffle will be added to your donations, to all three of you. So thank you. We're delighted to be a part of your team, and all you both continue, or all three of you continue to do. That said and done, we also would like to present you with a one-of-a-kind embroidered NDBS shirt. If you don't get the right size, no problem. We'll get the right size for you. We've got those. They'll get those later. Does somebody have them?
He's running out to get them right now.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Here they come. And you ought to say, well, is that, oh, that's the one you're wearing. I can hardly see that. That's why I wear glasses and more glasses and more glasses. Great. You look great. Look great. Yes, styling. You want to hold it up and show the crowd what it looks like? So there it is, folks. Yeah. So yeah, we'll get your size fitted and all taken care of after the program. Now, before we can